On this week's episode, we discuss Stardust's heel turn, Rollins and Reigns feuding, the Bella segment, WWE Supercard, and how much is too much wrestling, now on Byte That. Welcome everyone to episode 53 of Byte That, the somewhat maybe international professional wrestling podcast where we talk about the ups and downs of that which we love, which is the world of professional wrestling. Thanks for taking some of your very busy time to check out the podcast. Remember, it's available on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and ByteThat.com every single Tuesday night. You can search for us by looking up Byte That Cast. Same thing for Twitter and the Facebook. My name is Juan Velos. I am from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I am back. I'm alive. I was not attacked by a bear, but I am joined by the entire cast. First, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, the Sex Stallion returns, Ryan McNulty.
I never left, Juan, but I think I am happiest of all to have you back because you are such a better host than I, so welcome back.
I don't think it's so much that as much as it is like there's this third guy that when he's in the podcast, he brings, the double F. He brings it in here. So ladies and gentlemen, from Canada, we got Keith Poshik.
Number 1, I'm hurt. Number 2, welcome back. Number 3, I love you.
I love you too, man. This is one big happy family. And I'm back at a very interesting time. This podcast is going to be split into 2 different parts. We'll definitely talk about Raw in part 1. And part 2, we're gonna get a little bit more personal about professional wrestling, sort of
but
our
all the same audio file.
Exactly. So it's like, guess what? You don't got to hit pause. You just got to keep hitting that play button. Actually, you technically just hit it once, so sort of go along with that. But as we go into Raw, we do need to talk about this very unexpected thing. So we got a tag team championship match, right? So we got face tag team, Goldust and Stardust. Before we get to what actually happened, how did you feel about them actually getting a tag team opportunity? Were you feeling it like there was a possibility they could actually win?
I really don't know. I am happy to see them get a tag team opportunity. Because ever since Stardust has come along, there was sort of all this kind of fanfare about him initially, and then they haven't really done too much besides talk about the Cosmic Key and some backstage segments. So it's nice that they're actually getting involved in a real storyline, but I definitely didn't see a heel turn coming.
Yeah, it's cool that they're actually jumping over that gap because a lot of people, when they come in, they're just kind of, here's weeks of vignettes, and then nothing happens with them once they finally enter the ring. But that's not happening in this case.
And exactly, and I really felt like that. I thought the Cosmic Key stuff was pretty decent. I do want to quickly recommend, search for Sam Roberts on YouTube. He does multiple interviews. He did an interview with Stardust, who was completely in character. Awesome interview. But it was like, okay, we get it, Cosmic Key, all this stuff, but where is this really going? I felt like for a long time it wasn't going anywhere. We get this match, then we get the countout victory, which was kind of odd, and I thought that as a face team, they would just accept, they would just get a rematch immediately, maybe even win the tag titles. However, they proceed to beat down the Usos, and not in just a general pissed off type manner. They worked on the leg, on the ring post, they did all that stuff. And everybody seemed to be a little bit confused. The crowd, even we were sort of like, so is this a heel turn or are they just upset? We've had 24 hours to think about this. So sort of, what's your update on the situation?
Well, I feel like, first of all, this crowd did not seem like a good indication for maybe how crowds are going to react in the future. I thought they were pretty... pretty down, not really reacting to a whole lot the whole show. So they're probably a bad example for how things will go over in the future. But I feel like obviously when you have 2 babyface tag teams going for the titles, that you got to at least have someone for the crowd to fully get behind. And I really don't think they want to jeopardize the Usos' popularity here because, they're really coming into their own, and their style is a very, it applies very well to the babyface style. They're really exciting to watch. They do all these crazy outside dives and awesome tags. So I really feel like you kind of have to go with the Dust Brothers, or whatever they're called, the Dust Busters, whatever you want to call them. They probably going to be the heels here because they're sort of the eccentric ones, and it might be easier to pull off for them.
Plus, it's just cool how they did it, how they just straight up acknowledged, like, hey, this was our shot, and you got yourself counted out. This ain't going to happen.
I mean, on one part, we have the Usos. I think the Usos are sort of like a throwback to, like, the 90s face tag teams that you didn't really know too much about them, but you liked them. You know, like, they were just the good guy face tag team, and that was about it, because they've been tag champions, they've been over, but when you really look back, they haven't really had these amazing opportunities to show off personality, but their wrestling's cool, you know, they're unique and all that stuff. But then now you have on the opposite side, potentially heel brothers. So it's like a brother-brother type thing. So obviously they can go down
Hulk Hogan would be pumped.
Brother. No, and they have that heritage route. So there is really a lot of ground for them to go here. But, you know, as it tends to be to the things that aren't in the main event, are we going to overestimate what's going to happen? Because once again, I'm talking about family, you know, heritage, all of this stuff. But is all of this going to actually be on TV?
I don't think so. And I think we're not going to overestimate or underestimate. We're going to just estimate here. That it's kind of just going to coast along with, oh, you know, this match happens, we attack you, or we're at commentary talking, you know, all the standard things for a feud. And just as sort of an aside, wouldn't it be really lame if the Cosmic Key just ends up being the tag team championships? Don't you want to see something more, something really ridiculous and crazy for the Cosmic Key if they ever go anywhere with it?
Well, that actually brings me up to the next question, which is like, yeah, the Cosmic Key, now they're bad. And I mean, hypothetically, you know, they are. Things could change, obviously. But where does this go? I mean, for a character like Stardust, who does the whole hand thing, he's very much not a parody, but the whole reason they were paired up is so, like, there are these two likable brothers who people consistently enjoy their matches. So I just want to get a conclusive reaction on, like, is this WWE's answer to them not necessarily getting the reaction they expected, or is this something else?
I think it's a good answer to them not really getting the reaction that maybe they expected. I mean, there was a report that came out a while ago saying something about if Stardust doesn't get over, they're going to turn him heel, and it leads to a brother versus brother feud. Obviously, they still turned him heel, but they went with both of them going heel and doing a tag team feud. And I really think it is that ever since Stardust debuted, it's kind of just been downhill, and he hasn't really caught on that much. I mean, I enjoy the gimmick, but it's not necessarily one of the more over things with the crowd.
But how can you say that he hasn't really caught on? Like, it's just been a couple of matches and backstage vignettes. He hasn't really... Isn't it a little too early to say that?
I don't think it's too early. It's been around for what, like 2 months that they've been doing this.
But how long have they been on actual, like, not vignettes looking for the Cosmic Key? Only a couple of weeks.
But whose fault is that?
Exactly.
You know?
I think that's the situation where, you know, maybe we as fans were like, we get it, Cosmic Key, but when you talk about it so much, it's like, go into the damn ring. So now they do go into the ring, but then they just turn. So it's a situation of, like, you know, you can make us happy, and it really doesn't take too much effort.
Well, I mean, and to kind of go back to what Keith was saying, I mean, it's not necessarily the Rhodes brothers' fault that they're not, you know, catching on. They haven't really been given a good opportunity.
Exactly. So, I mean, as we always say on the show, this just started happening. So maybe hypothetically, this is a way to extend the Rhodes match at WrestleMania, where one of them turns on the other one, because they both
If that match ever happens.
I mean, I do think it'll happen eventually. I mean, they're both in their prime. I mean, it's weird to say that with a guy like Goldust, but they're great performers. However, switching to something else. So last week, you guys had an opportunity to talk about Dean Ambrose's absence. I mean, which I cried a little bit and all that. I've had some time to get over it. So now, a week in, we see a familiar face take on a familiar face. So now we have Seth Rollins developing a feud with Roman Reigns, which I thought was interesting because I actually thought they were going to keep that Shield distance, like from in a distance. So, are you excited for this? Do you think that this is a really good way to sort of hold off that Dean Ambrose Part 2 match?
I'm a big fan of this because I really think that this is good for Reigns to kind of come back and address this whole issue with Seth Rollins. It seemed a little weird that Rollins, turns on the Shield, and then only Ambrose is really the one who wants, revenge and things like that. So this makes sense for Reigns to sort of jump in and get involved in this story, especially now that Ambrose is away and Reigns can kind of be trying to avenge, Ambrose, although someone on Reddit clearly pointed out, where was he last week?
Yeah.
Kayfabe, guys, kayfabe.
No, it's one of the situations where, if he came out last week, I think realistically it's like, no, I'll wait another week so people pop more. But it is interesting. However, another quick tidbit, I recommend everybody check out the 2K15 panel. Even though this furthers in no way the storyline, I thought it was interesting. Stone Cold hosted it. Roman Reigns was part of it. And he was talking about the fact that Dean Ambrose is actually his drinking buddy. So I'm thinking, like, in my little head, creating a scenario is sort of like Dean Ambrose is out. Oh, so I got to step up for my brother, until he gets back or something like that. So for Keith, I want to know about you. How are you doing? No, but I actually do want to know what you think about this thing. Are you excited? This contrast of style. You have the powerhouse, you have the high flyer.
Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins were kind of stealing the show, right? And this whole thing is like they're working towards building up Roman Reigns. So with Dean Ambrose out of the picture, it kind of makes sense for Roman Reigns to go in there because it'll just probably help Roman in the long run. But at the same time, it still feels like a bit of a stopgap. Like Dean Ambrose or Seth Rollins is probably only going to feud with Roman until Dean comes back. And then Roman Reigns will probably only feud with Rollins until they inevitably need to have that match with Triple H. So it's like a stopgap, kind of.
Well, I actually just thought of a question. I think we've brought up multiple times in the podcast that maybe they're rushing Roman Reigns a little too much. So my question to you guys is this kind of good then? That we're actually just sort of taking a quick pause and then just letting those two go at it, and sort of let the things marinate a little bit.
I think it's a great thing because Seth Rollins is capable of great matches and it can only make Roman Reigns look good. So why not?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a really good place for Roman Reigns right now. He's not spending too much time in, the prime spotlight because they really do need to just build him up. If he's really going to be that guy, the hero at WrestleMania 31, then they have to be, really careful with how they build him up. They don't want to have him burn out too quickly. So I think this is a great feud. There's a lot of backstory with it. There's so many ways you can go with it. And it's, I think we've seen enough with him and Randy Orton. So this is a nice way to kind of move on and, continue sort of this Shield turmoil.
But don't you think this will be the prime feud eventually? Like, maybe not right now, but if it continues past Night of Champions, what other feuds would there be besides this one?
I think it's a matter of also testing the audience. For example, to me, it still surprises me that people keep chanting, "You sold out" to Seth Rollins. I thought that was going to die down, after 2 weeks.
They still chant CM Punk.
True. That is true. Sorry, AJ Lee. No, but with the Seth Rollins situation, he still gets that heat. So the way that I see it is like, you know what? Let's throw him against Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns, see which group gets the bigger reaction, and maybe we even get a competitive triple threat match. The way that I see it, when you think about Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns characters, I fully see them, being able to beat the crap out of each other, even when they respect each other for the sake of competition.
Plus, if you start thinking long-term, this helps post-WrestleMania. You're building up bad blood between these two, and if Roman is going to be the guy to take out Brock Lesnar, then, Seth Rollins cashing in on Roman Reigns adds that little bit of extra twist and awesomeness to the whole thing.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's like it opens up Pandora's box because you're really giving the people power to sort of say, like, you know what?
Did you say people power?
Oh, well, you give people the power to choose the future of Roman Reigns. Wow, I would never do that again. No, but you really do give them the opportunity of going, you know what? You like these three guys. You know, when you pair them up in any way, the piece of the puzzle always seems to work out. So just throw them in that mix, and everybody sort of wins. However, that doesn't always happen on Raw. Because for 2 weeks, and I am very happy, actually someone may be happy I wasn't able to talk about this last week. We got part 2 of a Brie Bella, Nikki Bella situation extravaganza, soap opera, what you want to call it, where if you could cringe and cry a little bit, I probably would. Just, are you guys okay? Like, how are you feeling about this? Because I don't know where to begin right now.
Well, part of me is excited, and that's because we have a new award to give out. And that, you know, it's not just the Slammy that Keith has. There's other awards. Now there's a weekly award for the worst of Raw. And our very first award winner happens to be this segment between the Bella Twins. And the reason why is just because of the cringiness and just how flat I feel like this segment fell, where they just got into all this gossipy BS that nobody cares about. And, I mean, it just shows how there's an art to promos, and this was a good example of how not to do one.
To play devil's advocate, isn't the whole feuding over gossipy BS kind of the perfect thing for the Bellas? Because they play them off, even in the Total Divas show, to be these gossipy, shallow people. And this is their feud.
But I think there is a way to do it. And the way to do it is not this. When you mention, oh, you were stealing boyfriends and stuff, you know what I mean? You have to in these promos, you have to talk in a way that you're eliciting a response from the crowd. You know, you can still have that gossipy stuff, but the way that you structure it, I mean, a very random segment that comes to mind about how even if it's something people may be interested in will fall flat is early TNA, that segment with Tony Schiavone and Mike Tenay where they're arguing about WCW.
Oh, right.
And they're just bickering back and forth, and the crowd's just kind of lost in it all, and they just don't know what to think of it, and they just start booing it to hell. And I felt a lot of similarities to this.
Exactly, because I think that you can do the whole personal scenario and have people buy it. Case in point, Mark Henry. Mark Henry went in the same segment from being the top heel to being the top babyface to then being the top heel again in the same segment. He had people crying. And really, in any other scenario, you put a script to, anybody else, and if they didn't feel it, if they didn't live it, people would have just gone like, dude, shut up, just retire, And I felt that about the Bellas. It just felt like, you know what? I don't care about your story because it feels like you're parroting yourself. It doesn't feel like you're actually giving a crap about your own life.
To backtrack a bit, I was just playing devil's advocate. I think it was the worst thing as well. But yeah, I think the difference between that scenario and this one is acting skills, because things like this live and die with that ability.
It's not even the acting skills. It's just you can't lose the crowd. If they had sort of, had a little more, just, I don't even know.
I think,
you know what I mean? Yeah, they don't try and throw too much at once. I feel like they're just it's bickering.
They threw an abortion joke in there, which is kind of crazy.
It's like, it comes off as bickering and not, I mean, if you can still have it be catty and drama based, but don't just have it be mindless bickering, is what I'm saying.
Stone Cold talks about this a lot in the Working Man's podcast, which is the Steve Austin show. And he talks about the fact that, they got to loosen up with the scripts. It felt too much like a script. Like, if the fans were dancing and, fandangoing in the crowd, it felt like the Bellas would have kept doing the exact same thing, word for word, action for action, and it would have not fit, you need to really interact with the crowd. We talk about John Cena so much for all the crap he gets, but if there's one thing that we always have agreed on, when that crowd hates him, he makes them hate him more or try to actually get him to love him. But he adapts, he doesn't perish. So any last thoughts about this segment? Any eulogies or something like that?
As brutal as they are, I'm still looking forward to the match to see what it will be like.
I was actually going to say the exact same thing, so cheers to Keith.
Yeah, I think the Bellas have actually gotten way
the
better
working
in the
man,
ring.
Swig of water.
Swig of water for the Bella twins. I was going to say Bella Man. That would have sounded, well, you got Cena. Whatever. Basically, Bellas, you've gotten way better in the ring. You know, I'm not Stone Cold, but I'm giving you the same advice he would. Like, you know, lessen up that script or something.
Almost as experienced as Stone Cold.
Exactly, almost.
No,
I like what you do, Bellas. Just loosen up that headlock or tighten it up or whatever.
Tighten up that STF.
And for those listening, you know, let us know. Maybe we are completely wrong. We're not getting the big picture. So send us a tweet at ByteThatCast or leave a comment on the YouTube channel. However, now instead of the tweet of the week, we actually have a question from Twitter. It's a little bit different. So Keith, my friend, why don't you bring it up?
We sure do. We got a question from loyal fan, Mr. Brillo Light on Twitter. BRILLO Light. Name Brian. So the question is, what is next for the Wyatt family after pretty much getting squashed? Now the second part to this question. Also, is Cesaro competing for the US title a good thing? Personally, I'm happy to see Cesaro will compete for a title that is interesting, and the WWE might give two of the biggest fan favorites mid-card titles.
Okay, so for part one, so basically, what's up with the Wyatts after getting pummeled by John Cena? I personally thought it sucked because, I mean, you've invested so much time into this character, and then to just see them, you know, bury him, although recognizing that heels are always made to sort of, you know, get pummeled by faces, it still kind of sucks for me.
It's kind of like a trend that every time Bray Wyatt gets momentum, it just kind of gets taken away. But at the same time, if you think about it, minus the Authority who already got beaten by Roman Reigns earlier that night, who else on the roster could fill that role of heels that John Cena could fight?
It's a good question.
You know, a band of 3 people comes to mind, but it's a shame they no longer exist.
Oh.
And would you take John Cena versus 3MB a tinge seriously?
No, but I would take Slater Gator seriously.
Yes.
So yeah, like, it sucks that it was Bray Wyatt, but I don't think there's anybody else that could fill that role right now.
There's 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and being fed to John Cena.
Is that a t-shirt?
No, but it might be on the Byte That Shop Zone, coming soon to a theater near you.
2025, let's go for it. So
exactly.
Yeah, for one of the question, it really sucks for Bray as a whole, but it's one of the situations where, I mean, who else? You know, who else? Actually, let us know. And for part 2, it's talking about Cesaro competing for a mid-card championship.
Wait.
Huh?
But where does he go from here? That was the main part of the question.
True. Sorry, sir. I do apologize. It's such a hard thing to answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about. He's feuded with John Cena and Chris Jericho. We talked a couple months ago about, you know, he has almost no place to go but down. And you can definitely feel that already, even before he's been set up for his next opponent. So, I mean, who's a good person to feud with? I mean, we can just drop some names, because right now we have no idea.
Is this a case where Bray Wyatt's character is so strong and powerful that he just straight up doesn't fit on the roster at this current moment?
I'll answer that question with a question, which is, for me as a fan of Bray Wyatt's character, if you told me almost anybody else in the roster he could feud with, I probably would not care too much. Because he's been... I mean, you took on Cena as one of your main feuds.
Cena, Daniel Bryan, Chris Jericho.
The Shield.
I mean, what's left for baby faces? I mean, is Sheamus the next top baby face?
But he's in a feud with Cesaro.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation they got themselves in. I almost feel like unless he has, I forget the word, but unless he reinvents himself, like maybe he admits he's not the god, you know, he thought he was, and then sort of transcends into a different character, I really don't see him going anywhere fast. And the problem is, it doesn't just affect him, it affects Luke Harper, who's awesome, and most importantly, Eric Rowan. Poor Eric Rowan, you're in my Superstars deck, but, I mean, that seems to be as far as you're going to get right now.
But he's cleaning up there. Oh, that's for sure.
I got, man, one ain't enough, man. I need 3 of them. So I love Eric Rowan now.
Just to think of it, though, I mean, there's not even, it's not even like the Wyatt family could feud for the tag titles because that's locked up. Roman Reigns is locked into a feud. So the Wyatt family is kind of lost in the shuffle right now. So, I mean, none of us can even really come up with a name. So I think that gives you an indication of it's not a good situation.
Yeah, so for everybody listening, who could he face and why? And would he be a babyface or a heel? Let us know. Twitter. So now for part 2 of the question, talking about Cesaro feuding with Sheamus for the United States Championship. Just sort of like, is it an interesting scenario? Are we liking it? For the first question, I mean, the first thing I do want to bring up is if you're a Cesaro fan and you have not seen that 2K15 panel, do yourself a favor, look it up on YouTube. I'm assuming it's there. I mean, even Cena was putting him over, like, instantaneously. Stone Cold was talking about Cesaro in the podcast because everybody saw, you take that script away from the guy and he's entertaining, and Sheamus and him were, like, bashing each other and it was fun. So if they take that into the ring, I'm all for it. That's my answer. What about you guys?
I just think it's interesting that, 2 years ago, Cesaro was U.S. champion, and now it's sort of like he's once again going for the U.S. championship. So has the belt been elevated, or has Cesaro just kind of stayed in the same place, or sort of what's going on there? I mean, it's good that he's getting involved in something, but I don't think he's quite had this rise to the top that everyone was expecting. Nevertheless, I expect a great match from him and Sheamus. I know that, they can usually always put on great pay-per-view matches. So, I mean, I'm excited for that.
Exactly. History proves that those two can go. Their styles just mesh so well. So why not have another good one of them?
Exactly. So as long as both men get some time, just to tell a story in the ring, I think that given their fighting styles, they actually don't need, like a bunch of promos. So even if you saw on Raw, it was just Cesaro throwing the belt at Sheamus. It's little things like that need to give, the opposite characters, where does each one stand? What does Cesaro want as a goal? What does he want in life? I love you, Cesaro. Get that U.S. Championship. And with that being said, it's time to bring up this week's edition of... Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Pick of the Week! That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another installment of the Pick of the Week. This week's Pick of the Week is WWE Supercard. We've talked about it. We present our decks with an E on social media consistently. No, just a quick tidbit there. I got to bring this up. I was backstage at a wrestling show, and a wrestler who also plays asked me, "How's your deck doing?" But I misheard him, so I'm just like, "What the hell are you talking?" Oh, okay. So that's what I needed to clarify. But yeah, WWE Superstars, it's highly addicting. We've been playing it for over a week nonstop, and I want to get sort of your guys' reaction. It's not the same as talking about it a day after it came out or something, as... we've had over 7 days to really, get in touch with our decks.
Well said. I'm still rocking a Vince McMahon Dream Team where I have 3 super rare Vince McMahons and a pro rare John Cena with Summer Rae as my uncommon pro diva. So I'm doing pretty well. I've made it to the super rare plus tier. I'm still waiting to get some other super rares that aren't Vince McMahon, but so far no luck. But the game's still great, and if you haven't played it yet, definitely check it out.
Yeah, I've had a lot more luck than Ryan. My team is consisting of a super rare Bray Wyatt, super rare Orton, super rare Bad News Barrett, and super rare Vince McMahon. Still only have an AJ Lee uncommon, but hey, you can't win them all. Now, instead of saying how great this game is and how much I love it and am addicted to it, I will tell you a story. It's Sunday night. It's 11 p.m. I sit down and play Supercard. I look at the clock. It is 2 a.m. And that's how much I love Supercard.
No, Supercard's highly addicting. My deck is a little interesting. It's Super Rare Eric Rowan, Super Rare Pro Eric Rowan, Super Rare Andre the Giant, Super Rare Del Rio, and then Rare Eva Marie. I mean, you can't make this up, only in Supercard. And it's highly addicting, and it's just like one of those things where you get to play a wrestling game without playing a wrestling game, if that makes sense. And it just works. So definitely check it out. Let us know what you think about that. I have a gameplay video available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ByteThatCast. And that'll do it for this week's Pick of the Week. Remember, once again, ladies and gentlemen, that is youtube.com/ByteThatCast. We have the podcast available every single Tuesday night. We have the show clips going up twice a week. We have a little bit of a special video going up every once in a while. Ryan and I are working on some behind-the-scenes stuff. We are mythical creatures from the future talking about things that are going to be occurring. What was that all about? And then Ryan hits the record button every Saturday, and we get to see his beautiful mug. What more could you ask for? And for everything else, remember Twitter and Facebook, Byte That Cast. It's always a good time. And our website. I got to bring it up. It's awesome. All of our stuff is there, bytethat.com. You can get all of that information. And guess what? Guess what, guys? How much is it not? How much does bytethat.com not cost people?
$9.99.
Yeah, that was horrible. My setup was horrible too, but let's go with it. So, you know what? It's also not $9.99. The game we just talked about. You know what game?
You mean $9.99?
$9.99. $9.99. And it's not shoved down our throats. It got over 1.5 million downloads in a week. And it had like one commercial, I think, one or two commercial tops during Raw. And after that, it's pretty much just been word of mouth. So regardless of we enjoy the game or not, which we do, I just wanted to sort of, quickly talk about that.
See, I have a theory about WWE Supercard. My theory is that Vince McMahon hates it because it got over on its own.
It could be possible.
But my actual point is that, this little WWE Supercard app, a game that they, barely promoted, it wasn't on any collector's cups or anything like that.
No ice cream.
No ice cream bars. No, this little app that they kind of just threw out there is amazing, and it just got popular without them shoving it down our throats, a la $9.99.
How much?
$9.99. Did you not hear? It wasn't $9.99. It's free.
Crap.
On iTunes, Android, and wherever you get mobile stuff. Go buy it. It's not $9.99. But think about this comparison. This is what came into my head. WWE Supercard is Daniel Bryan, and the WWE Network is Batista. Think about it.
Well, also one is free. We have to take into account that you have to pay nothing for one. Well, it's the free-to-play model, because you can pay real money. And I don't know who in their right mind would. If you did, I'm sorry.
Guys, I put $2 into the game.
No
really?
way.
Really?
Are you kidding
Yes.
me?
Yeah.
Huh. Did you get? Was it worth it? What'd you get?
I got to the finals in King of the Ring because of it. That was kind of cool.
Wait a second.
What?
You did this behind our backs?
Yeah,
I did.
You didn't tell
You know how
us.
much I didn't spend on it, though?
Wait,
$9.99.
which somehow transitions perfectly into our next topic. Not at all. But talking about Brock Lesnar, and just not necessarily Brock Lesnar, but this concept of we got the conclusion of SummerSlam, which is Brock Lesnar is our primary champion. He's the face of the company. Ironically enough, he's not always there. Now, post-victory, everybody's pretty much saying Brock's, is holding the championship until WrestleMania. And nobody's pretty much saying otherwise. So everybody's throwing the Night of Champions match out the window. This is going to last that long. Ladies and gentlemen, it is August 26th as we're recording. So until next year, I'll be married by then. And freaking Brock Lesnar's still going to be champion. So I wanted to sort of bring that to the table because I know, Ryan, you feel very passionate about this in the way that, has it always been like this? have we always had these scenarios where we are giving a situation that's so obvious, much like when The Rock was champion, if you think about it, and everybody's just mildly okay with it, even though for almost a year, you're getting the same thing.
Yes, this whole thing of a divine plan where it's right now we're going into Night of Champions and we're all pretty much expecting what the result is of the main event of WrestleMania 31. Has it always been like this? I feel like it hasn't, but in the last few years it has. That we just, it sort of kind of hurts your interest in the championship title scene because we basically already know what's going to happen 6+ months in advance.
I think it's been like this for a few years at the least. The another somewhat recent example that comes to mind is when CM Punk was going, it was Raw 1000 is the exact date when The Rock announced that he was going to face the champion at Royal Rumble. You kind of had that feeling like, okay, John Cena and CM Punk are fighting that night. The person who wins this is probably going to be champion until the Royal Rumble. And sure enough, CM Punk was champion until the Royal Rumble.
And it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that where Ryan wants to get is like, how long? You know, you mentioned, Keith, like it's been happening for quite some time, but we're at no point saying when. So was there a point, like was it after the Attitude Era? Because, I mean, if we bring up the Attitude Era, the championship changed on Raw, pay-per-views, I mean, it changed a lot of times, but you got to keep in mind, that was a whole different ballgame back then.
Title reigns are so much different now than they were then. Like, there would be, in the span of a couple of months, The Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H would all kind of throw the title back and forth. That just doesn't happen anymore. Title reigns are longer and fewer and far between.
And I just feel like at this point, we've just always come to expect that the biggest payoff of the year always has to be at WrestleMania now. You can't just have it on a one-off show. You know, there's been bigger moments that have not happened at WrestleMania, but now it's just ingrained into their system that, oh, we got a babyface. Oh, he's going to get over. He has to win at WrestleMania. You know, and I know that's happened with a lot of baby faces in the past, you know, Attitude Era, even before, whatever. But I just feel like, you know, oh, we got a guy, Roman Reigns, we want him to be the guy. Well, he's got to win the title at WrestleMania. There's no other way to do it.
I think that's kind of unfair because you could go back to like the Hogan and Andre days and it was like that. Like Andre dominated Hogan until WrestleMania 3. Where Hogan beat him.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit different, though, back then, because I was actually going to bring up Bruno Sammartino, which, I mean, is always, he will forever be the perfect example, and, like, maybe Fabulous Moolah of, you know, lengthy title reigns. But back then, it seemed like it was champion against challengers with an S. And now it's sort of just like, you know, it's John Cena against Brock Lesnar, John Cena against Brock Lesnar. Then we take a little break from this other guy, but we don't believe that other guy can win, you know, as opposed to back then. So it's similar, but different in the way with that. What I think that I want to get back to you, Ryan, sort of maybe that's the spin you want to give the situation is that it's not necessarily the length as it is the road. Like, it's not a rocky road. It's like, it's a road that has a beginning and an end, and it just sort of happens, and then we move on to the next thing without really getting that unexpected moment.
Well, exactly. I feel like nowadays the way the world title reign is, it's not about the journey, it's about the destination. Where, you know, most, like, the journey doesn't matter anymore. You know, it's just, oh, he's, you know, oh, Brock Lesnar's gonna face Randy Orton at X pay-per-view. There is no consequence. There's no interest because there's no chance that Lesnar's going to lose. It's, you know, so the journey doesn't matter anymore because we already know how it's going to end.
So by that logic, you're saying the whole Daniel Bryan authority thing didn't matter.
Now, that is a slightly different case because there was a plan, but the plan was disrupted. So that's why, I mean, I didn't bring up last year as an example of knowing exactly what's going to happen at the end of WrestleMania. Although we all did sort of think that was going to happen way back at SummerSlam. We thought, oh, you know, he's going to get his revenge at WrestleMania. but there were definitely some seeds that they planted to give us doubts, which it makes it interesting at the very least.
So how do you know those seeds won't get planted this time?
You make a good point.
And I think that perfectly segues into the reason why we're talking about this. So, we watch Raw every single week, not just for the podcast. I mean, we're wrestling fans, breaking news. But
yeah, it's somewhat that which we love, or whatever we say at the beginning of the show.
Exactly, that thing at the beginning. You should know it by now. That's beside the point. But I felt something was missing. Like when there's a really good wrestling show, even before it, you feel pumped up. And like over the course of around the past 2 months, I would say that we haven't felt, generally speaking, as excited before, during, and after Raw. It's sort of like, these things happen, this other one, but there's not that hunger. Maybe something shocking happens, like Brock Lesnar winning the championship, but the product as a whole feels like it's in this transition period. I mean, this always happens. This is nothing new. But then it sort of spawned a conversation that I actually want to bring up, which is, is there such a thing as paying too much attention to wrestling? And I'm not saying watching too much wrestling. There's a difference. Paying too much attention involves, like, when you watch wrestling, do you just sit down and look at it? Do you sit down and check out social media? Do you sit down and make lunch? Obviously, this depends on the scenario. We have three.
It's a very late lunch.
Yeah. I mean, dinner. Well, you can make. I actually make lunch during Raw for the next day. So.
Oh well, there you go.
Yeah.
You
so
go.
Considering the fact that we have three completely different lifestyles and we're somewhat maybe international, I want to ask you guys. So, number one, how is it that you watch wrestling? I mean, aside from like us talking to each other, like what's your general experience? And then sort of part two, do you feel like a slight burnout or just maybe like, this fire doesn't burn always?
So I guess I'll pick it up from there, Juan. So thanks for that. But the way I watch Raw is very casual. I mean, I think the main reason why it's hard for me to just literally sit there and just watch that and give attention to nothing else is that it's 3 hours, and that's a large part of a Monday. So I like to sort of also be in front of my computer, browse websites. I'm talking to these guys on Skype. So, it's a fun way to watch the show. I definitely enjoy talking about Raw as I'm watching it with people that also enjoy the show. So that definitely helps keep me interested because there's, for 3 hours, sometimes maybe only a third of the show is actually really good. And, obviously that changes Raw to Raw, but the average Raw can sometimes be hard to get through. So other things kind of help me and keep me from just basically wanting to shut it off and go to bed or something like that.
Yeah, I basically watch it the exact same way Ryan does. I have multiple monitors, so Raw will always be on the side monitor while I'm browsing or the internet, looking at something, talking with you jabronis. Because exactly like you said, Ryan, sometimes 3 hours just feels a little bit too long. Like, take the average Raw that we talk about. Maybe we talk about 3-4 segments. Clock it in at about 15-20 minutes a segment. We're barely hitting an hour at that point. And there's still 2 more hours of every episode of Monday Night Raw that basically feel like filler. And that can just be a little too much sometimes.
Yeah, I agree completely because when a Raw is good, the 3 hours feel like an hour. But when a Raw is bad, the 3 hours feel like 5. And generally speaking, I watch it more or less the same way that you guys do. I do pay a little bit more. I'm more obsessed about wrestling, breaking news. You guys have always sort of know that. So like I'll consume all kinds of wrestling. But even sometimes that I'll have like my full attention. I'm like, I'd almost rather go back and watch an old pay-per-view, or like an old Raw, because it doesn't feel like this is. I can get a 10-second recap next week of what is happening right now. Or like how many times can we watch Cesaro RVD? I get it. Not all fans are like we that watch on a weekly basis. I was watching SummerSlam, and some of the guys that I was watching with, they were asking me, who's this guy called Cesaro? Who's, RVD's back. So it's for those fans. But once again, with us, the ones that devote a weekly thing, a lot of times I'll say we sort of get punished for that. understandably so, we're probably the minority. But sort of going back to that, yeah, I'll just sit down, I'll talk to you guys, I'll check the Twitter and Facebook every once in a while just to sort of see, if there's anything funny. But I'll try to analyze sort of like what's going on, how are they going next week. But it's hard to get through sometimes, especially when it's stuff like Bella's. I'm like, I'll wake up at 5 a.m. sometimes for work. I'll get home like an hour before Raw, and it's like I'm watching this. It's hard, it's hard. So
thanks, Bellas.
Yeah, look at what you've done, So sort of as a 0.5 version of this question, if Raw was 2 hours, which we've had Raw for 2 hours for a couple of years, was it the same experience, or did you find yourself watching it more? Keeping in mind also, we had less chores and responsibilities, but moving that aside, was the attention span the same?
I honestly don't think there's a good answer to that question, because you're really just trading one evil for another. Because if Raw went back to 2 hours, the conversation would shift to, well, these guys don't get screen time. We're seeing the same thing every week over and over and over again, and it might just get boring in that respect.
That's a good point, but I felt the 2 hour Raw, whether, sometimes it was bad or good, was at least only 2 hours. And sort of helped not burn you out of it.
It's much more consumable at 2 hours. Like, that 60 minutes makes a world of difference.
And we think about wrestling where it's like, it's insane that a TV show, weekly TV show is 2 hours long. What, besides maybe the news or some other thing like that, what other TV show on the planet is 2 hours long? Never mind 3 hours long. It's crazy, besides maybe a football game or something like that. But, it's more produced like a television show than a sporting event. It is a hybrid, but you get what I'm saying.
And sort of bring up the second question I had first, does this burn you out? Let's be honest. Being completely sincere about our situations, does the whole fact that Raw is 3 hours long on a weekly basis, no matter how much you love wrestling, does it get a little bit tiring?
I think the way I watch Raw really helps me avoid burnout, because I personally don't feel burnt out at all, but it's because Raw, when it's on, doesn't have my undivided attention. I'm just watching it, and then when something awesome happens, I'll give it my full undivided attention. But once it's over, I move back to the next thing. So it really helps avoid burnout. And no, I really don't feel burnt out.
I do. I absolutely do. I feel like there's very little that has my interest right now. Especially since Dean Ambrose was like the one thing that I was really excited about. His singles run, and I'm really liking where they're what he's doing with his character and his feud with Seth Rollins. And that was sort of like the last thing that was really holding my interest. I did enjoy, Daniel Bryan's sort of rise and all of that. So a lot of the things that kept me interested aren't on the show right now. I feel like the show is very weak right now. So it's making it a lot harder to stay interested. So I do feel burnt out. I still plan to watch. I'm still dedicated to this podcast, and I do still love wrestling. So I won't give up on that. And it doesn't always get my undivided attention, especially lately, because of that interest. But one thing that will always get my full attention, if I can help it, are the pay-per-views, and I still enjoy watching those.
Exactly. I think that, there's always the monthly payoff, or, sometimes we get even two on the odd month, with the pay-per-views, great matches. I'm sort of in the middle ground. Like, I'm not burnt out, but I'll admit there are points in Raw where I'm like, seriously, I do have things I need to do in my personal life. And, like, I'm trying to watch this, but it doesn't feel like I should be. So that's where, I start checking the email and all that stuff. So final question about this then, because we were sort of discussing this last night, and I thought it was really interesting. Is there such a thing as one particular way to enjoy wrestling?
I don't think there's one way to anything, you could probably argue. So, if whatever way you enjoy something is the way you should do it, as long as it's not negatively affecting others. I mean, if you like watching wrestling with the volume at max while stomping around and beating people up, well, that's not very practical for everybody else.
Exactly. I think it's a matter of, as long as you enjoy it, specifically with wrestling, because as you mentioned, Ryan, it's a hybrid. It's not a movie. It's not sports. It's in between. So even though you do need to sit down and watch something, it's prone to errors. It's prone to extending things for the sake of time, for the sake of pay-per-views. So I think that creating that balance, especially nowadays, gives you sort of a nice option to keep yourself tuning in.
Yeah, and another thing about wrestling, though, is I don't think there's any other, I don't think there's any other show or sport or anything that sort of demands as much time as wrestling does to keep up with it, or WWE. As you know, as an organization, because I mean, you're thinking 3 hour, even just Raw, 3 hours a week, every single week. There's no off season like football or baseball or anything like that. There's SmackDown too, if you want to count 5 hours of television on its own, not even counting main event on the network.
NXT.
And then you get the monthly pay-per-view. I mean, if you actually want to consume even just Raw, that's, you know, you're demanding, what is it, like 900 hours? Would that be, no, not, wait, no.
What math are you trying to do?
How many weeks are there in a year?
No, 52 weeks times 3.
352 hours.
352 hours. I was thinking over a few years, but I don't know where I got those numbers.
Yeah. It's a wrestling podcast, not a math one.
That's why you talk about wrestling. So that's a lot of time. And that's just Raw. And if you watch SmackDown on the pay-per-views, clock some more hours on there. So, I mean, I think it's just easier to get burnt out on wrestling because there's no break if you want to keep up with it.
Exactly. So to conclude, wrestling is an investment. There is burnout, but there's also ways you can really find, like Heath, he will browse social media and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think as long as you enjoy wrestling and also you know what's going on, you don't just go like, oh, I think something happened to each and every segment. Guess what? To each his own.
Let me run something by you, guys. Is the Hulu version of Raw potentially the best version of Raw to watch?
I would argue that. I've only watched a couple of them on Hulu, but I know, like my friend, he'll always watch the beginning of Raw or something, and then the next day he'll just watch the Hulu version. And they cut out a lot of the fillers. Sometimes, every once in a while, they do cut out a segment that's worth watching. You can always look it up on YouTube. WWE even uploads a lot of their stuff on there too, so you can watch it legally. Even if, so there's the one-off segment you missed, but you get sort of the moments that you're looking for when they kind of cut it down to 2 hours. So potentially. But you miss, one just quick thing is you miss the live experience if you're into the social media and discussion. That's about the only part you miss, but if you don't care about that, then maybe the Hulu version is better.
So there's probably 1,001 ways to watch wrestling. Let us know what your way is. Send us a tweet at ByteThatCast. You can be on your couch, on the toilet. It can happen. Technology is crazy nowadays. It can be while playing Hearthstone. It can be by playing whatever it is you're playing. I just made these guys very happy. So thank you for tuning in.
I'm thinking about a world where you spend 3 hours on the toilet on Mondays. That sounds like heaven.
# heavenly hemorrhoids. So with that being said, Ryan, take us home, buddy.
Thanks again, Juan, for that sweet transition. Anyway, we want to thank you guys for tuning in once again. Before you go, just going to share a few quick things with you. As always, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ByteThatCast. We are approaching 600 subscribers, which is a big deal to us. So why don't you help us out and hit that subscribe button. We've got content that we are uploading every week. Thursday, we got a special video. Saturdays, I talk about usually a headline of wrestling, give my take on it, as well as you can always catch the podcast and show clips. Also, check out the brand new ByteThat.com. All our content's there with a sweet new look, so definitely check that out. And don't forget to interact with us on social media, Twitter and Facebook with ByteThatCast. So once again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.